The room is already tense before the words even land. The overhead lights hum like a warning. The audience hushed beneath the sterile glow of the committee chamber. Cameras pan slowly across polished tables and paper stacks that look more like loaded weapons than notes. And then, like a match struck in a drought, Kash Patel leans forward, his voice cutting through the still air. I'm not sure Congresswoman Crockett even understands the law she's citing. For half a heartbeat, no one moves. Then the sound of quiet gasps ripples through the space, a thousand tiny cracks in the veneer of civility. Patel leans back, satisfied, a half-smile tightening his jaw. He's done this before. He knows the performance, the provocation, the smirk, the headlines waiting to right themselves. But this time, something's different. Across the table, Jasmine Crockett's pen stops mid-stroke. The tip hovers above her notes like it's deciding whether to draw blood or ink. She doesn't blink. Her eyes lift slowly, measured, deliberate. It's the kind of calm that makes loud men nervous. Her smile is small, controlled, almost kind. The room feels the temperature change. Someone in the back coughs. Another stifles a laugh. Even the gavel hesitates before striking wood, as if the laws of sound have agreed to wait and see what comes next. Patel shifts in his chair, the smirk faltering by a millimeter. The narrator's voice glides in, low and certain. He shouldn't have said that. The words hang like prophecy. Around them, time stretches. The click of a camera shutter, the rustle of a sleeve, a single drop of sweat tracing the line between arrogance and fear. Freeze. And then, like a film peeling backward from the reel, the moment rewinds. Voices play in reverse, paper flutters upward, the smirk unforms. To understand how the room reached this moment, we have to go back. Back to the beginning, of a hearing that was supposed to be predictable. Back to a stage where one man's condescension collided with one woman's unshakable command of truth. The rewind slows, the chamber reforms, because the next words out of her mouth would rewrite the balance of power in that hearing forever.
He arrived like a man stepping onto a stage he believed was his. Kash Patel didn't just walk into the hearing room, he performed his entrance. The press cameras caught the tilt of his chin, the gleam of confidence sharpened for prime time. His folder of notes, tucked neatly under one arm, wasn't for study. It was a prop, one he'd wield with the casual precision of someone who's learned that volume often substitutes for truth. He greeted aides by first name, smirked at the opposing side, and took his seat with the assurance of a man expecting applause. The microphones adjusted, the lights flared, and somewhere a journalist tweeted, "Patel brings his trademark aggression to the hearing. Expect fireworks." The first few minutes unfolded like a carefully scripted show. He knew which cameras to look at, how to pivot just enough to give a quote the perfect frame. For Patel, hearings weren't about discovery, they were about domination. His supporters called it strength, his critics called it spectacle. Either way, he was ready to play the part. But across the table sat someone who didn't need theatrics. Jasmine Crockett barely glanced up. While Patel gestured, postured, and spoke in sound bites made for cable news, she simply flipped through her binder, lips moving silently over statutes and precedents. Her notes were dense, handwritten, lived in. Every margin carried thought, not performance. She wasn't here for the clip. She was here for the truth. The contrast was electric even before they spoke. Patel's voice filled the air like static, buzzing, insistent, loud enough to disguise the hollowness underneath. Crockett's silence, on the other hand, commanded its own gravity. The camera lingered on her expression, unbothered, patient, the calm before a storm no one saw coming. The narrator's tone slides in like a whisper slicing through noise. In Washington, confidence often masquerades as competence, until someone asks the right question. Cut to the montage. News clips flash across the screen, Patel defending the indefensible, spinning investigations into narratives of persecution, smiling through scandal as though controversy were his natural habitat. Former Trump aide Kash Patel joins another high-profile hearing, known for his aggressive questioning and combative tone, loved by the base, feared by the facts. Then contrast. B-roll of Crockett in a courtroom years earlier, young, deliberate, sharp-eyed. Audio of her saying softly, "My job is to stand for people who've never had a microphone." A headline scrolls by. Freshman representative brings public defender fire to Congress. Another reads, "Don't mistake her quiet for consent." Social validation flows through the narrative like applause from afar. On-screen tweets flash. Crockett's calm scares them more than her fire. She doesn't argue to win airtime, she argues to educate. If dignity had a microphone, it would sound like her. The narrator returns, steady and knowing. Two kinds of power were sitting in that room, one born of privilege, the other of persistence. One learned to command the spotlight, the other learned to survive without it. Patel flipped a page with theatrical precision, ready for his next line. Cameras leaned closer. Every word he'd prepared was meant to provoke, to draw headlines, to draw her out. But what he didn't realize, what no one in that chamber seemed to grasp, was that the very silence he mocked was the fuse of his undoing. Because arrogance rarely reads the room, and Patel was about to misread it completely.
There's a pattern to arrogance, a rhythm rehearsed until it feels like confidence. Kash Patel had perfected it. For years, he'd built a brand not on persuasion, but on provocation, on knowing that the loudest voice often drowns out the most informed one. In that congressional chamber, his plan wasn't to debate Jasmine Crockett. It was to dominate her, to make her flinch, to push her off balance, to turn the exchange into a viral clip where he appeared untouchable. Every gesture was part of the choreography, the smirk, the half-laugh that preceded a question, the leaning back in his chair after delivering an insinuation as if he'd already won. His eyes didn't study the evidence, only the reactions. He was playing to the crowd, not the Constitution. The narrator's voice cuts through, quiet but surgical. In politics, mocking a black woman's intelligence isn't new. It's a centuries-old play dressed in modern rhetoric. Cut to a flash montage. Patel on late-night talk shows, smiling too easily, brushing off ethics questions with practiced charm. Sound bites overlap, his voice calling oversight a witch hunt, dismissing testimony as political theater, mocking opponents as unqualified. The audience laughter then feels different, forced, almost nervous. Back to the hearing room, his fingers tap a rhythm on the desk. He doesn't notice the silence that has started to surround him. The image dissolves into a chessboard, pieces gleaming beneath white light. A hand moves a queen. The narrator continues. He thought this was a game of moves. She was about to teach him what real law looks like. The board fades into the glow of courtroom lighting. Patel stands in an earlier life, a prosecutor once sworn to protect the law. There was a time he believed in its weight, its balance, but power changes men. Somewhere between ambition and allegiance, Patel stopped defending justice and started performing it. His arguments became weapons, not tools. He no longer sought truth, he sought the upper hand. In another clip, he speaks at a rally, voice thick with self-assurance. "They'll never catch me off guard. I know how to play this game." The crowd cheers. But in slow motion, that confidence curdles into something else, the hollow echo of a man who mistakes calculation for conviction. Back to the present, he's rifling through his notes, waiting for his moment. Each talking point is a blade sharpened for television. Attack credentials, question experience, undermined authority. He's convinced she'll overreact, that Crockett will rise to his bait and feed his narrative. Yet across the table, she's still calm, pen poised, eyes fixed. It unsettles him more than any insult could. The narrator's tone deepens, the tempo slows. Arrogance thrives on chaos. When calm enters the room, it starves. Cut again. Patel rehearsing with aides behind closed doors, practicing lines meant to sting. You don't even understand the statute. You're twisting precedent. Do you even know what you're talking about? Each line designed to belittle, each pause engineered for impact. They laugh. They don't see the trap they're building for him. Parallel editing begins. His talking points flash on screen beside Crockett's silent preparation. His empty rhetoric against her annotated law book. His smirk glance against her focused eyes. His scripted confidence against her lived experience. The contrast grows unbearable. The music tightens, strings drawn like a bow about to release. Patel clears his throat, ready to deliver the jab that will define the clip he's imagined. He doesn't realize he's walking straight into it. The lighting hardens. The camera catches the faintest twitch of impatience at the corner of his mouth, the first crack in the mask. The narrator lowers his voice to a whisper, almost compassionate. There are moments when power forgets that truth doesn't play defense. The chessboard returns for one last flicker, the king piece glinting under the lights. A hand hovers up above it, but doesn't move. Because before the fall, you must first build the height of arrogance.
Long before the cameras, before the gavel and the glare of congressional lights, there was a young woman in Texas who refused to look away when the world turned its back. Jasmine Crockett learned early that justice wasn't guaranteed. It was something you had to wrestle from the jaws of indifference. She wasn't born into privilege or prestige. She came from classrooms that smelled of chalk dust and late nights filled with quiet determination. Her first lessons in power didn't come from politics. They came from watching how quickly truth can be silenced when no one speaks for it. As a law student, she sat in libraries that never slept, surrounded by casebooks thicker than hope, memorizing not just the language of the law, but its failures. Every statute, every precedent, every ruling that left someone unseen became fuel. When you've seen justice denied in real life, a mock hearing doesn't scare you. Flashback. A cramped public defender's office, papers piled to the ceiling, phones ringing, fluorescent lights buzzing. A younger Crockett sits across from a man in an orange jumpsuit who won't meet her eyes. He's been written off by everyone, poor, forgotten, condemned by paperwork. But she doesn't see a statistic. She sees a story. She listens, she fights, and when the judge finally says, "Case dismissed," the man whispers through tears, "You actually believed me." Those moments didn't make headlines, but they made her. Cut to nights when the office emptied and the city outside pulsed with sirens. She stayed behind, studying, writing motions by hand, eyes raw from exhaustion. The vending machine dinner, the coffee gone cold, they were her silent witnesses. Each victory was quiet, each loss was personal. But through it all, her purpose sharpened, to be the kind of lawyer who stood where the system failed. Years later, when she walked across the stage to receive her law degree, her family stood in the crowd, proud, tearful, knowing the weight of what she carried to get there. The camera lingers on her cap and gown, sunlight glinting off the seal of a promise fulfilled. Her smile isn't about arrival, it's about readiness. Cut back to Congress. The same calm fire sits behind her eyes now, older, steadier, unshakable. The hearing table might be polished oak instead of metal benches, but the principle is the same. Someone has to face down the people who think power means superiority. She didn't enter Congress for applause. She entered because fairness is still waiting for its defenders. There's a difference between chasing attention and chasing truth. Kash Patel was built for the camera. Jasmine Crockett was built for the cause. She knows how to stand still while others perform. She knows how to breathe through insult and smile through provocation. Every time a man like Patel tries to belittle her, he doesn't realize he's talking to every courtroom she's ever fought in, every barrier she's already torn down. The screen flickers, a flash of her in debate defending civil rights, her voice steady as pundits shout over each other. She doesn't shout back, she just waits. And when she speaks, the volume of the world seems to drop. Her strength isn't volume, it's precision. Her armor isn't anger, it's mastery. Montage: a client shaking her hand outside a courthouse. Her mother's proud smile at her swearing in. Headlines reading, "Crockett challenges status quo with sharp legal mind." Tweets scrolling by. She's not new to pressure, she's fluent in it. Every underestimated woman carries two battles, the one she fights in the room and the one she fights to be seen inside it. As Patel flips his notes and adjusts his microphone, she glances at him not with anger, but with understanding. She's seen his kind before, men who confuse confidence with command, mockery with intellect. She spent a lifetime outthinking them. The camera closes in on her face, serene, focused, unbothered. The light catches her eyes, and for a moment, the viewer sees both the young law student and the congresswoman she became perfectly merged. This isn't just a hearing anymore. It's history looping. The same arrogance, the same doubt, and once again, the same quiet fire rising to meet it. The gavel strikes. Patel clears his throat, ready to provoke. Crockett doesn't flinch. Her pen glides across the page one last time, then stops. The narrator breathes the final line like prophecy. And the next time someone tried to belittle that fire, they would regret it instantly.
The chamber hums with tension. The low static of whispers, the clicking of pens, the mechanical eye of the camera blinking in anticipation. Kash Patel leans into his microphone, voice sharpened to cut. He doesn't wait for permission. He interrupts mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-breath. "Excuse me, Congresswoman," he says, that smirk curling again, "but your interpretation is legally weak at best." There it is, the sneer disguised as sophistication, the line designed to sting. The air tightens as if the room itself inhales and forgets how to exhale. Jasmine Crockett doesn't respond. Not yet. Her pen keeps moving, slow, deliberate strokes across the page. It's the kind of stillness that unsettles loud men. The cameras catch it. Patel gesturing, Crockett writing. Noise and silence side by side. The narrator's voice glides in like a low hum of thunder. There's a rhythm to arrogance. It overplays itself. Aides exchange glances, unsure whether to intervene or let the drama breathe. The gavel taps once, twice, lost beneath Patel's continuing monologue. He repeats the word weak, as if saying it often enough will make it true. He glances around, gauging reactions, searching for validation in the faces of allies. A nod here, a smirk there. But even as he speaks, something in his tone begins to waver just slightly. Because the longer Crockett stays silent, the louder her composure becomes. The narrator continues, quieter now, the words measured like footsteps before a drop. Patel mistook quiet for hesitation, but silence, in the hands of someone who knows its power, is never surrender. It's preparation. Crockett finally sets her pen down. The sound of it touching the paper feels louder than the gavel. She looks up, gaze steady, posture unshaken. Patel leans back,
expecting interruption, ready to spar. Instead, she tilts her head slightly, voice calm enough to hush every corner of the room. "Are you finished?" The simplicity of it slices through the chamber. It isn't a question, it's an indictment. Patel blinks. Once. Twice. The smirk falters. Someone coughs, muffling what might have been a laugh. The cameras zoom in closer. You can almost hear the collective heartbeat of the audience, of the staffers, of the viewers who will later watch this moment on loop. The narrator's tone hardens, each word a heartbeat. Everyone expected her to lash out. They expected volume, fury, fireworks. But power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sharpens to a whisper. Crockett folds her hands on the desk. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Patel's bluster lingers in the air, suddenly fragile, stripped of its echo. The music drops out completely. Silence so deep it hums. Her expression doesn't change, but the energy in the room does. The hierarchy flips. The predator becomes the subject. Even the gavel seems reluctant to interrupt. Patel clears his throat, a hollow sound swallowed by the acoustics. He opens his mouth to retort, but something, her stillness, her patience, her command, steals the words before they form. The narrator breathes into the void he leaves behind. And in that silence, you could feel the shift. Power, unspoken but undeniable, changing hands without a single shout. Crockett glanced briefly at her notes, then back at him. The faintest smile, not mocking, not triumphant, just knowing. The kind of smile that belongs to someone who's been underestimated too many times to count and has learned to make that mistake fatal for anyone who repeats it. The audience can sense what's coming, even if Patel cannot. The pause before impact, the inhale before revelation. The narrator's tone turns cinematic, pulsing with inevitability. Because when arrogance meets calm, the outcome is already written. Crockett leans forward slightly, ready to speak. Patel shifts in his seat. The room holds its breath. And that's when Crockett decided the classroom was open.
The silence stretches, delicate but charged, the kind that hums like electricity before a storm. For a moment, it feels as though the air itself is waiting for permission to move. Then Jasmine Crockett exhales softly, a single, measured breath that resets the room. She doesn't glance at the cameras or at the chairman waiting for order. She looks only at Kash Patel, her voice calm enough to cut glass. "Let's take a moment to talk about the law you just mentioned," she says. Her tone isn't defensive, it's surgical. Each word lands with the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove she's right, she just needs to remind you that she always was. Patel leans back slightly, a hint of confusion flickering across his face. This isn't the confrontation he rehearsed. He was prepared for fire. Instead, he's facing ice. Crockett turns a page in her notes, revealing not emotion, but evidence. She reads the clause Patel had cited, her cadence even, her diction crisp. Then, without looking up, she begins to dissect it. "You've quoted Section 241, she says, but you conveniently omitted the second sentence, the one that establishes prosecutorial discretion in matters involving civil rights violations. It's not just relevant, it's controlling." A murmur ripples through the aides seated behind them. Someone whispers, "Oh no," under their breath. Patel's eyes narrow, the confident smirk evaporating by degrees. Crockett turns a page in her notes, revealing not emotion, but evidence. She reads the clause Patel had cited, her cadence even, her diction crisp. Then, without looking up, She begins to dissect it. "You've quoted Section 241, she says, but you conveniently omitted the second sentence, the one that establishes prosecutorial discretion in matters involving civil rights violations. It's not just relevant, it's controlling." The outsiders turned to their insider source. "She caught him off guard, didn't she?" "I think it goes much deeper than that," the insider replied coldly. Crockett continues, the rhythm of her reasoning building like a symphony's slow crescendo. "You've also misapplied the precedent from United States versus Guest, which has stood since 1966. The court held that when state actors conspire to deprive citizens of rights under color of law, federal intervention isn't just permissible, it's mandatory." The room is utterly still now. Even the stenographer pauses, fingers hovering above the keys. The narrator returns, a quiet reverence threading through the words. "When truth walks in calmly, ego has nowhere to hide." Patel shifts again, searching his papers for something, a note, a lifeline, a deflection, but finds none. Crockett's tone doesn't waver. She doesn't attack him personally, she simply dismantles the illusion he built. "This isn't a game of semantics," she says, her voice steady as marble. "It's about what the law requires, not what makes good television." The subtext lands like a stone in water. Patel blinks, but she's not finished. She raises her eyes fully now, gaze direct and unflinching. "As for your claim that my interpretation is legally weak, I'd suggest reviewing the Fifth Circuit's decision in Smith versus United States, which reinforces that statutory interpretation must begin with intent, not assumption." Her words move with precision, each phrase anchored by a deeper truth. She's not lecturing, she's teaching. Across the room, an aide scribbles frantically, another bites their lip. A journalist's camera catches Patel's expression, the subtle collapse of certainty, the dawning realization that he has no footing left. The narrator. "Some moments don't shout to be remembered. They whisper, and the world leans in." Crockett pauses long enough for the gravity to settle. "The law doesn't reward performance, Mr. Patel. It respects understanding." Her voice is a current, slow, deliberate, impossible to resist. She flips her final page and rests her hand flat atop it, as if closing a file that's already been won. Then she delivers the line that will echo long after the hearing ends. "Mr. Patel, if you truly understood the law, you wouldn't have tried to weaponize it." The room freezes. A single second stretches into 10, then 20. You could hear the hum of the lights, the faint click of a distant camera shutter, the invisible weight of realization settling on Patel's shoulders. His mouth opens slightly, then closes. No sound follows. The narrator enters again. Voice lowered to a near whisper. In that pause, dignity won. The camera pans to Patel. His posture crumbles just enough to betray defeat, the kind of defeat no rebuttal can hide. His notes lie scattered, useless now. He looks not at her, but down, as though searching for a version of himself that still controls the narrative. Meanwhile, Crockett doesn't celebrate. She doesn't gloat. She simply picks up her pen again and begins to write. It's the calm after the verdict, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the truth didn't need volume to be victorious. Aides exchange looks, admiration, disbelief, relief. Someone exhales audibly, a sound caught by every microphone. The gavel taps once, but it's drowned out by the unspoken chorus in the room. Respect. Then the cutaway montage begins. Clips of the exchange flood social media within minutes. TikTok captions. She schooled him without breaking a sweat. Twitter hashtags bloom like wildfire. Hashtag Crockett Clapback. Hashtag legal masterclass. Hashtag truth wins. Edits set to dramatic music rack up millions of views overnight. Commenters write, "This is what composure looks like," and "You can't out-talk someone who actually knows what she's talking about." In talk shows across the country, pundits replay the clip.
The hosts lean in, some smiling, some stunned. "It's not just a takedown," one commenter says. "It's a reminder that intellect still matters." The narrator overlays the frenzy with a slower truth. The internet loves a victory, but this wasn't a spectacle. It was a correction. Back in the hearing room, Crockett rises. Her chair slides quietly across the floor. Patel remains seated, motionless. The contrast is poetic, one standing tall in composure, the other sinking beneath the weight of his own words. As she gathers her papers, her voice returns once more, softer than before, but resonant. "I hope, Mr. Patel, the next time you invoke the law, you remember its purpose." She leaves it there, not a reprimand, but a lesson. The camera follows her as she walks out, every lens hungry to capture the moment, every viewer feeling the same unspoken certainty they just watched dignity dismantle arrogance in real time. Music swells, soft piano over steady heartbeat percussion. The narrator speaks through the fade, each word deliberate. History doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives in a sentence so clear it leaves no space for denial. Fade to black. But what happened after the hearing proved this was bigger than one exchange. It was a message.
The first replay hits within 20 minutes. A political commentary channel uploads the clip with the caption, "How to End a Hearing with One Sentence." The thumbnail freezes on Jasmine Crockett's calm expression, the pen resting in her hand mid-air. By the time the video finishes uploading, it's already being shared by thousands, journalists, students, activists, and viewers who don't usually watch hearings at all. The narrator's voice glides over a rising symphony of strings. Within hours, Crockett wasn't just trending, she was being quoted in law classrooms. On one screen, a professor pauses the footage. "Watch her cadence," he says to his students. "That's not aggression, that's precision." The class nods, mesmerized. On another, a young woman replays the same moment for her friends, whispering, "That's how you check disrespect." News anchors across the country loop the footage, each with their own spin. One smiles as the replay ends. "You know, this might be one of the most composed legal rebuttals we've ever seen in a congressional hearing." Another commentator laughs incredulously. "She didn't even raise her voice, and he had nowhere to go." The narrator continues, voice lower now, resonant. When truth lands quietly, it doesn't just echo, it multiplies. Twitter timelines ignite. Reaction channels dissect her delivery frame by frame. Memes flood Reddit, a still of Patel blinking with the caption, "When you realize you're not the smartest in the room." Another reads simply, "Lawyered." TikTok duets bloom overnight. Young women in hoodies and headscarves reenact the moment, mouthing her words in perfect sync. "If you truly understood the law," their smiles sharp with pride. Others stitch her clip with messages, "For every time they underestimated us." The rhythm of validation builds. Hashtag Crockett Clapback trends across platforms. Within 12 hours, the phrase "weaponize the law" becomes a cultural shorthand, half joke, half rallying cry. A late-night host jokes, "I don't know about you, but if I ever get into an argument, I'm calling Jasmine Crockett." Laughter erupts. Applause follows. The narrator's tone deepens, threading reverence through the noise. It wasn't just a clapback. It was a correction centuries overdue. Cut to Patel's side. The once bold pundit who mocked her legal knowledge now avoids questions entirely. His team cancels scheduled interviews. On social media, his posts are sterile, vague statements about partisan distractions and media narratives. Commenters flood them with the same response: "Say her name." In contrast, Crockett's feed lights up with gratitude. Messages from law students, young lawyers, community organizers. "You made me feel seen. Thank you for reminding us what grace under fire looks like." One viral tweet reads, "She didn't argue to win, she argued to teach." It gets over 1 million likes. The narrator. In a time when politics feels like theater, she turned it back into civics. Split-screen montage. On the left, Patel staring blankly in an old interview, face frozen mid-deflection. On the right, Crockett walking out of the hearing, back straight, papers in hand, her stride unhurried. Between them, headlines flash like lightning strikes. Crockett destroys Patel in legal showdown. A masterclass in composure, when calm becomes power. Cable panels can't stop replaying it. One analyst notes, it's rare, almost cinematic, when someone turns condescension into clarity. Another adds, she didn't just win the argument, she redefined it. The clip transcends politics. Morning shows feature it as a moment of dignity. Talk shows turn it into inspiration. By the next day, a local news anchor in Texas signs off with, and to anyone questioning her credentials, she answered, didn't she? The narrator softens. Every so often, a moment breaks through the static, not because it's loud, but because it's true. Cut to a slow-motion replay. Crockett looking up from her notes, eyes steady, voice unwavering. The same line that silenced the hearing now plays over footage of young girls watching on their phones, smiles spreading. If you truly understood the law. The narrator's voice threads through. For every woman who's been told to calm down, for every professional who's been dismissed as too young or too different, this was a spark. Clips show community centers, classrooms, cafes, people watching on small screens, heads nodding in quiet recognition. In each frame, it's not just admiration, it's ownership. Her victory feels shared. Then the rhythm slows. A montage of headlines fades to a single frame. Crockett walking out of the chamber, her silhouette framed by bright hallway lights. Cameras flash, reporters shout, but she doesn't pause. She just walks. Steady, unbothered, unstoppable. The narrator's voice lowers to a near whisper. She didn't just win the moment. She reminded America who the moment was for. The image holds, suspended between calm and consequence. But behind every viral clip lies a lesson, one we keep forgetting until someone like her reminds us.
The hearing room is empty now. Chairs sit askew, papers scattered, microphones still humming faintly from hours of noise. Outside, reporters rush to deliver their versions of what happened. But inside, it's quiet, the kind of silence that feels sacred after battle. Jasmine Crockett is still there, pen in hand, writing the last of her notes. The fluorescent lights hum above her, cold and constant. The same desk where arrogance tried to stage its performance now belongs entirely to her composure. The narrator's voice enters, softer now, carrying both reverence and reflection. This wasn't about Kash Patel. It wasn't even about one hearing. It was about a nation watching arrogance meet accountability. The scene cuts between contrasts, Patel's empty chair and Crockett's still presence. The image speaks louder than any soundbite. He came for attention, she came for truth. He performed for the cameras. She performed for the record. The narrator continues. In an age where volume too often replaces value, dignity feels like rebellion. Slow motion, the papers on her desk, the way she straightens them, the pause before she closes her folder. She doesn't look triumphant. She looks purposeful. Flashbacks ripple through the frame. Patel's smirk, her calm reply, the stunned silence that followed. Then, over it all, the voice returns. Integrity doesn't need to shout. it endures. We see Crockett leaving the chamber, the echo of her heels measured and steady. The hallway outside buzzes with chatter. Journalists shouting questions, interns whispering theories. She doesn't rush. Every step feels like punctuation on a lesson the nation wasn't expecting to learn that day. Cut to news clips, overlaid with commentary. Analysts debate strategy, intent, who won. But beneath the noise, one question rises like a heartbeat. What would politics look like if more leaders answered mockery with mastery? The screen fills with faces, ordinary people watching from their phones, teachers replaying the clip for students, parents showing their kids what composure looks like under fire. In every reflection, there's the same message. Dignity isn't passive, it's powerful. The narrator softens to a whisper. Dignity is not weakness. It's the loudest silence in a noisy world. A montage unfolds, snippets of Crockett's past woven with the present. Her early courtroom days, standing beside clients who couldn't afford counsel. Her first campaign stop, microphone crackling in a community center. Then back to now. Her walking down the marble hallway, the light catching the edges of her expression. The story's moral crystallizes not in words, but in feeling. Composure as defiance. Clarity as courage. Power can be borrowed. Titles can fade. But grace, that stays. As she reaches the door, the music swells. Faint piano layered with strings, not triumphant, but resolute. She pauses just before the exit, glancing once over her shoulder at the empty chamber. It's a look not of pride, but of purpose. The quiet acknowledgement that truth, when spoken without fear, always finds its echo. The camera lingers on that moment. A woman framed against the vastness of the institution that once underestimated her. Maybe the real victory wasn't the takedown. Maybe it was the reminder that knowledge, calm, deliberate, unapologetic, still has the power to restore order in the chaos. Outside, the city hums, traffic rolls, news vans flash their lights. But inside that stillness, a truth has settled that even headlines can't distort. The narrator's voice fades in one last time, carrying the weight of reflection. When arrogance burns itself out, dignity remains, steady as a flame that refuses to die. The final image returns to Crockett's desk, her nameplate glinting in the low light. A pen rests beside a closed folder. The camera pans upward, the frame slowing, soft focus at the edges, a visual whisper that some fires don't need to roar to change the air around them. And yet the story isn't over, because the fight for respect never truly ends. The screen fades back to that moment, Patel's smirk, the slight tilt of his head, the condescension hanging in the air. His words echo once more, clipped and hollow now. I'm not sure Congresswoman Crockett even understands the law she's citing. Then, silence. Her reply cuts through it again, calm, unwavering, immortalized in replay. Mr. Patel, if you truly understood the law, you wouldn't have tried to weaponize it. The narrator's voice returns, steady and reflective. He mocked her legal skills. She reminded him and the nation what the law actually sounds like. Montage, social clips, tweets, laughter, pride, the ripple of a single moment turned movement. Then, the narrator's tone shifts, speaking directly now, intimate, collective, inviting.
If you believe arrogance should never win over dignity, this is your channel. If you've ever been told to stay quiet when you knew you were right, this space is yours. Every like, every share, every comment keeps voices like hers amplified in a world that still needs them. So take a stand, not with anger, but with attention. Like to amplify her voice. Comment if you've ever been underestimated. Subscribe to keep truth in the conversation. The music softens, a slow piano melody under rising strings. The final images are quiet but powerful. Crockett's calm face as she leaves the chamber, sunlight spilling across the marble floor, the headlines fading into white. The narrator's voice lowers one last time, because sometimes one sentence can restore faith in justice. The screen fades to black. Then a single line appears in white. Your voice is the next chapter.